War Thunder. The game that throws you into some epic air, ground, and naval battles. Not only can it be overwhelming at first, but it can also leave you with some long-lasting mental issues and anger management issues. But don't worry, in this video I'll be primarily focusing on ground battles and share some of the things I've learned throughout my 2,700 hours played, and hopefully by the end of this video you will find some of these tips useful. Before we jump in, I just wanted to make a small disclaimer that I am by no means a professional War Thunder player, so take these things with a grain of salt. And with all this all out of the way, let's get into this. Okay, before we actually go to battles, we're first going to go through some of the settings that I would advise for you to set up. Grass and tank sight turn to off, because once you're fighting over ridge lines, grass can definitely mess you up, because you may have a shot but you don't see through the grass, and the other player most likely is going to have this setting off and he's going to have advantage over you. So I'd suggest having this off. In terms of graphics, I have most of the settings set to maximum because I just like the way the game looks. It's visually really appealing. I don't care about being super competitive. Some people turn the graphics down to have a slight of an advantage, but I don't care about that. Now, sound settings are also quite important. This is the thing where it's gonna matter the most for you, because you want to hear whenever someone is actually ambushing you, or someone is actually coming up to you, or there's an aircraft that's flying towards you. So make sure you have your own engine as low as possible. That will help your engine to be quieter. Meanwhile, other players' volume, make sure you have it to 100. In terms of control, I have my rangefinder set to mouse 4, which is, I find it to be the most convenient for me. Also, under camera control, I have my mouse wheel set to sight distance control, which helps me to be more precise whenever I need to make any incremental changes to my range. For another setting, we would also need to go into ground vehicle battle settings, and we'll also need to turn this off from a tank gunner side. It will help you be more precise with your shots, and in a second I will show you what it looks like with it on and off. With this sitting on, it might be not really visible, but at the very corner you might see my barrel sticking out, which might sometimes lead to some inaccurate shots. With it off, you'll see, once I reset my camera, that barrel at the very corner, it is gone. For the rangefinder, you'll want to press your designated rangefinder, the one that you've set up, either mouse 4 or by default R. You're going to aim at the tank, measure the distance, and you'll set it to the distance that it said, and fire it. That way you get a shot which is much more accurate. Now, in terms of ammunition, I'm not going to go into too many details because it will make this video far too long. TLDR, just make sure you have ammunition that has the most penetration. Nice. With some exceptions, for example, with this type of ammunition, it might be harder for you to kill someone because it's just a kinetic penetrator with no explosive filler. Nice. So you need to balance sometimes, or if you see that you just penetrate it but you don't do any damage, nice, you should switch up your ammo to more like this one that has more explosive filler. And if you're hitting soft targets, make sure you hit them with explosive filler, because you can kill them a lot easier without having to waste a bunch of ammunition on a single lightly armored target. Also, while on the topic of ammunition, make sure to always lower the amount of ammo you take with you into the match. This is crucial because the more ammo you carry, the higher chance of it detonating once you're shot. If you don't want your tank to be obliterated by a single shot to the side or even to the front, avoid taking a full rack of rounds. Okay, so let's move on to another tip, which is probably one of the most useful ones in battles, primarily in realistic battles, not so much in arcade battles, which is using your binoculars. Because, for example, over this hill there is an enemy, and if you're in first person mode, you're most likely not going to see him. But with the binoculars, not only you can see him, you can range him, which already will set you up with a more precise shot that you can take Okay, so another useful thing that binoculars can be used for is doing the, I don't know what the exact term is, but using the binoculars to shoot over the ridges. So for example, right now you might not see the enemy or not be able to precisely hit it, but if you can see with the binoculars, as long as it's lined up, these both circles, once they are lined up, you press shift and hold the mouse button and it immediately fires, and you can fire it from behind cover with minimal exposure to yourself. Another rather common mistake a lot of new players do is putting a vehicle that is incompatible with their lineup. War Thunder is all about lineups and vehicles being compatible in those lineups. So for example, if I want to play low tier vehicles, let's say I'm starting out and most of my vehicles that I have are like 1.0 BR, 2.0, 1.3, and those low BR vehicles. But I have one vehicle that I've just now, let's say, researched. We're going to use this T-34, for example, which is 4.3. So what is going to happen is I'm going to be matched against other tanks of this BR and higher. So instead of meeting tanks at 1.0 and 3.0, I'm going to be seeing tanks all the way to 5.3, and as lowest as it can go is going to be 3.3. So you have to make sure that whenever you're going into a match, your lineups are as even as possible. So for example, in this case, this is a solid example of how it should look like. All of those tanks are as close to each other with their rankings and BRs as they can. Same goes over here. That's the most important thing whenever you're starting out, is to make sure you don't rush it. And if you just research that higher BR tank, don't put it in your lineup until you have like at least 2 or 3 of a similar BR, and only then put them in your lineups. Okay, so I think that covers it. All the settings, all the preparations for the battles, the ammo types and the amounts. Now I think we can cover the differences between the arcade battles and realistic battles, and which ones you should preferably play and why. So for starters, I would advise you to start off with ground arcade battles to be more precise. Reasoning being is they're going to be more beginner player friendly. The combat is going to be a lot more fast paced, and it's going to be a lot more forgiving. It's not going to have all those punishing mechanics that realistic battles have. Tank is going to be a lot faster, more maneuverable. You can actually find more detailed description once you just hover over the arcade battles. Same thing with realistic battles. Your tanks are going to be handling a lot slower, more sluggish, more realistic. There's going to be no indicators of the enemies, so it's going to be a lot harder to spot them. You're going to have to use the rangefinder that I showed you how to use. And as for the arcade battles, well, if I was starting out War Thunder right now for the first time, I'd focus on learning the maps and flanking positions and whatnot to get a better advantage when I actually go into realistic battles. Because once you get a hang of it, I'd advise you to move over to realistic battles. Not only, at least in my opinion, realistic battles are more fun, they provide you with far more experience and silver lions compared to arcade battles, which will help you progress through the tree a lot quicker. Okay, and that wraps up my tips for the beginner War Thunder players. I'm sure I've missed quite a few. There are definitely some more tips regarding upgrades, research points, inside the battle tactics, how to use your camera. There's a lot of tiny little details. Do a part 2 of this series if there's going to be an interest. But other than that, hope you found this helpful. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe to the channel for more War Thunder content. Do you have maybe your own tips to share? Maybe some questions, maybe some critiques? Maybe I've missed some crucial tips. Let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear them from you, because I'm always, even now after playing War Thunder for so long, I'm always learning and still finding out things that I've never known before. Yeah, let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.